Welcome to the I Hate Critics movie review podcast. I'm professional film critic Sean Patrick. With me is Jeff.
Hello, fellow people.
Jeff, where can they get your art?
JeffLassiter.com is my website. Jeff Lassiter Pop Cult is my Instagram that has links to all my my Etsy and TeePublic and all that stuff. So I made a record amount since TeePublic started doing their artisan versus apprentice program, to which I was only an apprentice, even though I have over 200 designs. I made a record profit in October. $11.
Wow.
I checked about 3 years ago in October. I made $264 or $265 in October, and then they switched it, and then I made $11. It's great.
There's got to be another site out there somewhere.
Yeah, but they're all owned by the same people.
That's great. I'll buy Jeff's art anyway. Go to his website and get it from him directly.
Yep, I'm always willing to bring my stickers and any prints you want if you're within a little bit of a drive. So
there you go. And don't forget, also this week, I want to remind people that Amelia Perez is debuting on Netflix. I know a lot of people are going to miss this one because Netflix, they have a million movies that they drop and don't tell anybody about. They went out of their way to purchase this one after a festival showing where it was received rave reviews, like back in, March, April sometime. They bought it, and then, of course, it's Netflix. So they just, hey, it's going to be there tomorrow. I just happened to look, and it's going to be there tomorrow, apparently. And
it's been on my radar since we talked about it a little bit, and I guess I manifested it because it showed up in my IMDb today. Just randomly. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have to go to my sister's to watch that because I don't have Netflix.
So yeah, just if you're listening to this and you hear about that, if you want to actually watch this movie and maybe try and save it so that it can be part of the Oscar conversation, I don't know if it's that good yet. I've just trust a lot of people who talked about it and raved about it. Maybe it's bad. I don't know. But it's apparently going to be part of that conversation, and thus that to me means it should be seen by as many people as possible. And I don't know, Netflix is just bad at this, as is Apple, as is just about everybody these days, bad at telling people that they've got movies because they don't value marketing. I don't know.
The days of word of mouth are gone.
Because you're throwing a movie out into the sea now. It's like throwing a letter in a bottle into the sea and hoping that it finds the people that it's looking for. Because there are people going to so many different places to find information that, the idea that you're just going to get word of mouth on this, you've got to find some places. You've got to look for the places that actually people go to and market there. Buy these places so that people know that your movie is coming out. It's the idea that you're going to save. I mean, literally, in the business that I've been in for 30 years, radio, one of the things our salespeople will always tell you is that the companies that don't buy advertising are the ones that are out of business very, very quickly. And it happens just about every time, where if you do not value marketing your business, you're going to go out of business because you're not telling anybody where to find you.
Yep.
It's very, very stupid to not have a marketing budget. And the idea that Hollywood is going to save money, these people think they're going to save money not buying ad campaigns for their movies. That's ridiculous. That's just utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, I think people don't understand the value of marketing. I worked for a company as their marketing director, and it was just like pulling teeth to get people to, invest in it. We'll just put it all on Instagram. No, that's not how it works.
I always go through this with banks. Like banks want to, they want to have a bank wants to have a Facebook page, and like nobody likes their bank on Facebook unless you're like 70. Like, how are you going to reach people that way? Ugh, so dumb.
You can do all that. That's just extra. That's not, like I suggested, hey, what about this kind of advertising? No, that doesn't work for us. Why not? Well, we tried it one time about 15 years ago, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, the media landscape has changed, and people have stuff flying at them from every direction all the time because everything we do is filled with advertising now. So you got to get in front of those eyes.
But you got to diversify your advertising, not get rid of it entirely, which it seems like a lot of these movies have. They've just eliminated advertising completely.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll notice our movie came out, and if not, well, what do we care?
Exactly.
It's so irritating to watch that continuously happen. At least Neon tends to tell people that they've got a movie coming out because they made the world aware of Anora coming out this past weekend. Because people did actually go see this, which is actually good. This is a really great movie from director Sean Baker, starring Mikey Madison. In a performance that should win an Academy Award for Best Actress. This movie is so incredibly absorbing and watchable and fascinating. And Sean Baker just has this amazing talent for looking at stories in a way that most people don't. He doesn't look down on people on the lower end of the economic ladder like so many people who make movies. A lot of times when it comes to a Hollywood movie, especially, poor people are just a bad haircut and some old clothes, or a bad wig and some old clothes. Like that's poor people in America. And not that these characters, at least Anora, she's not entirely poor. She works as a sex worker though, and so she's not on the higher end of the economic ladder, and her money situation is rather fluid, it would seem. But we're on that end of the economic ladder with Sean Baker in a lot of his movies, like The Florida Project or Tangerine, especially, or even a movie he made back in 2005 called Takeout, which is this incredible film that few people have seen. It's in the Criterion Collection now. He made it as a co-directing effort, and he and a Asian director made it together about this man from I think it was China who came to America illegally and was working as a delivery driver, riding a moped around New York, just delivering food. And he's got to make a lot of money in a single day, and that's it. It's just his encounters with various people who may or may not tip him well enough for him to survive. And it's just absolutely stunning. It's just an absolutely stunning piece of work. It's beautiful and inspiring and real. It's just so very, very real, and that's just one of the hallmarks of his work. Like The Florida Project just felt so authentic, even when you're watching Willem Dafoe, who is a well-known actor and does stand out from the other actors in that movie. It still felt incredibly authentic to that place. Tangerine, my God, it felt like you were in the lives of those people in that film. They're just so remarkable, and you feel that way here with his style. It's not intrusive, but it is certainly just so incredibly observant at all times, as this sort of absurd situation unfolds where she meets this the son of a Russian billionaire. We automatically, I guess, we probably assume that this is some kind of criminal enterprise, even though it doesn't turn out to be, which is kind of great, great subversion. She meets this guy who's a son of a billionaire, and she's of course a stripper, but she also works as a sex worker. And when he approaches her about the idea of outside of work activities, she's immediately down. They start having sex regularly, and then he invites her to go to Las Vegas, and then they end up getting married. And it's a whirlwind, and it's exciting, and it's filmed in a style that is just so engaging. You can't help but just get caught up in this story. Not necessarily a love story, but certainly one that it's just one that you're very caught up in, and they're very caught up in, and where it's going to go. You just have to know where this is going to go, because Mikey Madison is so engaging, and it's just so electric to watch. She's got this perfectly unique energy. She reminded me a lot of Rachel Sennett, who's another actress who just has this incredible energy all of her own that's just not like any other actor. And that's Mikey Madison for sure. She's just not like any other actor. I just could not stop watching her and wanting to see what she was going to do next.
I was really, really surprised and happy with her in this movie. She was in Scream 5, and I got to say, I hated her in that movie. I hated that character. I did not love Scream 5. That was out of all the Scream movies, that was my least favorite. And I think it was partially because everything was at 11 for her in that movie. And there are scenes in this movie where she's at about an 11, and it started after a little while. It started to grate on me, but then I realized that's her personality, especially as Anora. She's loud and abrasive, and not somebody you would necessarily want to take to, meet your family right away until you kind of eased this character into it. I was really I was super engaged with the characters more than the story, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It has that frenetic energy, and the only time I felt like it did get bogged down a few times. I thought that it lagged a little when they were searching for Vanya.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just kept kind of repeating have you seen this boy? Have you seen this boy? Have you seen this boy? And that was the only part where I was a little taken out of it, where I was like, okay, let's get to him. But her energy really kind of saves those scenes, even if they do get a little repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
The way she interacts with all the different characters, from her coworkers in the strip club to Vanya's friends to the businessmen who you assume are just like Russian mobsters, but they're really not. I kept thinking that the whole time, Toros. I'm like, oh, he's like a mob boss, and then he's baptizing the baby in the Russian Orthodox Church. I'm like, oh, okay. Igor is probably, even though, okay, I got to say this, I've got to criticize it a little bit for the fact that it's so obvious what's going on between Igor and Anora, that he's just taken with her right away, and every time he's on screen from the time that they come into the house until the end, it's him, and you just know what's going to happen because of the look on his face. But that being said, he was probably my second favorite character in the movie.
Yeah.
Just because he was so sincere and so real. Whereas everybody in the movie is a little bit of a caricature of what they're supposed to be. She's a kind of a character of a queen stripper. Toros is he's a little bit of a caricature of a Russian businessman. Vanya's mother is it's like she's just at 11 all the time. I feel like they could have humanized her a little bit, but she was such a cartoon villain that I kept having a hard time with that. With what I really, really wanted to see her get hers from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
From literally the second she came on screen, I was like, oh, I want to see her get just fucking ripped apart. And then she gets ripped apart, and her husband starts laughing at her, and that was one of my favorite parts of the movie too, because he's like, you can tell he wants to say, she's right about you. Um, I the energy for me is what saved this movie. Um, all just her energy, Mikey Madison. Every time she's on screen, she's the only thing you see. And in the parts that were a little repetitive and the parts that were a little unbelievable, she brought every. How do I say it? She's so out there but grounding.
There's
If that
there's
makes
a
sense.
particular grounded absurdity to the whole thing, because in many ways, like the whole thing about Vanya disappearing and her getting, essentially kidnapped by this group of men is kind of a sitcom plot in some ways, but it is grounded by Baker's style and by her performance, and I thought Yuri Borisov as Igor, also just their energy was keeping it a little bit grounded, whereas Garrick and Tauros are playing it a little bit broad. I think those characters are intended to be broad. I think that's kind of that's just who they are. It's just kind of a broad people, and so I bought into all of them, and I bought into the whole situation just because when you get that rich, you can just do things. Like, and
Yeah.
it's just wild to think of like a world where you can just do things and then just do them. Um, and
Was I wrong in wishing that it had been a little more slapstick instead of where it's almost a little too serious when she's being kidnapped? Because I mean that's basically what it is. And I kept wanting, like a little more broad comedy. I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't really care because I was so much enjoying her and so much enjoying just the whole. I didn't know where anything was going, so I was kind of just searching the screen for any kind of clue as to where this was heading, and I was consistently surprised throughout. I also think that just stylistically, Sean Baker keeps things so visually interesting, even though it's just one set for a long period. Inside the house, I thought the way he keeps his camera moving, but not so noticeably that it takes you out of it. I just fantastic stuff. He's just so good at pacing and keeping the scene alive to get to the information that he needs, but also without layering in any kind of thick level of expository dialogue. I adore the way he does things like that. There's a couple of great examples in this movie of people who are able to dispense information without having to stop the entire movie to introduce who they are and what it is that they do. There's a lot of people who could learn a lot of things from watching a Sean Baker movie about just how to deliver information without having to stop your movie dead. But the Igor Annie relationship, the minute he looked at, I was just like, oh my God, he's already in love with her. And I was like, I kept waiting for that to happen, and I was so excited for it by the time it did happen. And then, of course, that scene at that ending is so devastating and so lovely. It's such a kind of it seems like kind of a dark moment, and at the same time, it's two people like who are so deeply connecting in this single moment, beyond what's actually happening. Just so intensely moving.
Yeah, I the two of them together was at the end was just really the subtext that they were playing just sprang through like the whole, all up until the very last shot. So
it's just superb stuff. Just truly, that ending is one of the best endings. I think it's the best ending I've seen in a movie this year, right up there with The Substance. Like, just both of them. The Substance, of course, just because it's just so shocking, but this is so moving. Like, this one was in my heart as opposed to my stomach. I guess that's definitely where The Substance was, reacting from my gut, uncontrollably.
It was a way better ending than Your Monster or what's the other one that we were bitching about a couple weeks ago.
Oh God.
I see so many movies now that I'm just like, I don't know when
Yeah. This movie is incredible. It deserves every last bit of praise that it's been getting. And like I said, Sean Baker has just got an entire filmography of things for people to watch and get a sense of who he is as a director. Like one of the best working today. I would put him right up there with Ari Aster. We've got such an amazing generation of directors going on right now that I don't think people are really taking enough note of. Like, we've got him, we've got Ari Aster, we've got Jane Schoenbrunn. Just this amazing crop the people who made Everything Everywhere. Like, just incredible directors working right now, and we're not celebrating that enough.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's really one of a kind. Um, and this is to me is this is his, the one that really broke out, I think, for a lot of people. So hopefully this leads to bigger things for him. I mean, the Palme d'Or, he's it's kind of he's not somebody you're not going to notice from now on.
It's funny. It's somebody. I've tried to avoid talking about this because I don't know if I have just the right way of putting it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I was reading somebody on Twitter saying, "Don't compare this to Pretty Woman," and I'm like, "Why not? This is actually how that would play out." This is the real life version of that. This is how that really goes.
Well, and that's that. I didn't even think about that, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
What I kept thinking about after I saw this yesterday was what a douchebag Vanya is.
Yeah.
How at first you seem like he's just a 21-year-old, so he's kind of an idiot, but he means well. He does not mean well at all. So, once I got past, oh, he's just an idiot, and he's going to tell his mom that he really loves her, and yeah, it's just that really bugged me. What a dick he was.
I don't think she fell in love with him. I think she fell in love with the idea of money and security. I think that's that's really her motivation, and just the idea of not having to do sex work anymore probably was very very appealing to her, especially when you've got this opportunity to be part of this billionaire family and this just this very easy lifestyle. I don't think she was a dumb character or even a not necessarily a gold digger either, but
no. You could see it on her face when, she's like, okay, give me the money. She knows it's transactional. And when she's trying to be with him because she wants to buy into the fantasy, she's trying to be with him and he's playing his video games. He's just looking over her head the whole time. And, you see a flash of anger before he brushes it off as, no big deal when she knocks the controller out of his hand.
Mm.
So yeah, he was not a good guy.
No, he was a 21-year-old drug addict. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed their dynamic. I enjoyed the way she approached him. I enjoyed the way she approached this idea of being with him. It's just, it was all of it was just very exciting. Her the way watching her mind put this all together was really impressive.
Yeah. I don't think she was in love with the idea, but she wasn't in love with the man. And I really think that she really embodied that, well, I'm doing this for what I think are the right reasons, but they might not be. So I don't know. I really liked it. I did. Again, I'm going to say, and I always say this, it was a little bit stretched out in spots where I felt it could have been a little condensed.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I mean that without without sacrificing any character moments or anything like that.
Right.
There were a few spots where I was like, okay, this could be trimmed a little bit, but it went by pretty quickly. I only checked my watch a couple times, and that was just because I was exhausted. Then went right after work, but
I think one of the things
that
though about a Sean Baker movie is that the tiny flaws are baked into it because just his approach is so different. So you're gonna have there are gonna be flaws. No
yeah.
movie is perfect, and that's kind of part of the charm is this sort of the shagginess as well of his work, and another reason to just adore his way of making movies. Well, in terms of new movies, we had a stellar week because we had two incredible movies. We had Anora, of course, that we just talked about, and now we're talking about another incredible movie, Heretic, directed by Beck and Woods, the team that wrote the screenplay for The Quiet Place, and of course, Haunt, and the one bad movie, the Adam Driver movie, which was not very good, but
it was fine.
This one is a terrific bounce back effort. This is a really, really awesome movie, starring Hugh Grant as Mr. Reed, who is a man who is requested to have someone come by his house and tell him about Mormonism. Two Mormon missionaries are out doing their work and trying to convert people and give them information, hand them out flyers and whatnot. And they've made this man part of their route. They go to his house and on the premise that his wife is in the other room, and go inside to talk to him about Mormonism. And obviously we know that he doesn't have a wife, but they don't. And they end up engaging in this incredible scene that goes on for a good 15 to 20 minutes, where it's just Grant holding court and going back and forth with them over religion, and bringing up questions about Mormonism, raising questions about other religions and how they relate back. Just superb dialogue, just this incredible back and forth, and Hugh Grant just being incredible. The way he can take the qualities that we love about him and turn them in just the right way to make them malevolent is just, it's just top tier stuff. I was saying to somebody else today that this is like his audition to be the modern era Vincent Price. Like this, he could totally pull that off based off of this and based off of just the direction his career is going in terms of him playing these incredibly smart, witty, interesting, engaging villains. And of course, he's playing well against two terrific young actors. We got Sophie Thatcher and her last name is East. I can't remember her first name off the top of my head. Chloe East. Playing the missionaries who have ended up in this situation. They're not technically supposed to be in a room with a man alone. But on the assumption that his wife is there. Plus, they set up just this little bit in dialogue about how Chloe East's character hasn't had a conversion yet, and she's really excited to get somebody, signed up to be part of the church. So it's a little fun stuff, little fun details, interesting little details that they throw in here, because this movie is so incredibly smart, and sometimes a little too smart. There's a couple scenes, kind of in the second act and late in the third act, where we've seen the entirety of Mr. Reed's plan begin to fold out. The characters, these two missionary characters, kind of get some dialogue that seems like the screenwriters are trying to patch some plot holes. To maybe a character knows a little bit more than they should, or they're a little bit smarter than they've shown before. Just having a little bit of dialogue that does kind of tip the hand a little bit on the movie, but I didn't mind it because I thought it was incredibly well delivered, especially when Sophie Thatcher is starting to push back on his plan and talk, and kind of getting him off his game with her various questions. I thought that was really well handled in many ways, but other aspects, again, like I said, there's just a little bit too knowing at times, but otherwise, I just thought this movie was incredible. I was kind of holding my breath throughout. And really just watching Hugh Grant was so much fun.
Yeah, this is definitely top 10 for me for the year. Um, I loved this movie. The like everything you said about everybody was so on the money. Hugh Grant was it every single time he did something that was suspicious, I was thinking this could turn out to be where they're coming after him because he's could just be a really innocent guy. That's how he plays it. And he's got that charm, the Hugh Grant charm that comes through even when he's being his most evil. Um, this could 100% have been a movie where your expectations are thwarted and the two girls are not actually Mormon missionaries. They're there to kill him or something. And he could have just been this innocent, goofy guy who just wants to learn about religion. Um, his I'll be right back, and every time I'll be right back, and goes into the dark, and you don't know if he's necessarily right inside the other door or if he's actually going to do something. What? And the panic in their eyes when they realize they can't get out is real, and it's like they play it so beautifully. um Sophie Thatcher, she's been in so much stuff. I mean, just I I think that lent itself to me with a little more. She's a little more knowing because she's been in so much stuff that I've seen her in.
Right.
Um, whereas Chloe East, I've never seen her in anything before that I was aware of, and she just plays that kind of aw shucks. I'm trying so hard. She's definitely playing a pick me.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, is it an act? Is it she's just really that naive? Um, and you kind of just don't know until they're in that kind of church sanctuary room.
Yeah.
And then you realize that, yeah, she knows a lot more, but that was because she had to. They converted. They weren't, she wasn't born into it like Sister Paxton.
Right.
And I thought when we get to the kind of what he's actually doing, I thought it was so smart because it's so obvious, but it dawns on you slowly. But once it's kind of spelled out, you're like, oh, of course. Why didn't I think of that? It's really smart that way, in that that it's this very simple thing that he's looking for.
Yeah. And you just don't, but it's so well directed that I really didn't see, I didn't see ahead, and I was kind of, again, left just sort of dumbstruck, kind of watching and waiting to see where the hell this was going to go. When they reveals what he's got going on even deeper into the basement, I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
That was terrific. I also love the look of this movie. There's a couple of scenes early on before we get to Mr. Reed's house. There's this one just absolutely picture perfect, where it's just a little scene where the girls are crossing a street in between a pair of houses, and behind them is the mountains, and it's just gorgeous. And this perfect, there's this just excellent symmetry to it, and their eye for just angular images is just so good here. They just the structure of a scene visually is so strong. They've gotten so much better. They're taking just their eye is developing so quickly with that, and especially when we get inside the house, their approach to his house, the choosing the house and choosing the production design and of each of those rooms. Everything just has this very. It makes you uncomfortable at the same time. Some of it is so perfect that it's satisfying. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I just adore what they did with the cinematography and the production design. It all just adds to this incredible, incredible movie.
Yeah, so I saw this, and then everybody was talking about Anora, and I'm like, I don't want to see Anora now because this is my perfect movie. And And then I went and saw Anora, and I'm like, okay, you know what? If I had to pick between the two, it's still going to be Heretic, um, because it goes by so quick. It doesn't. There's no draggy spots in it at all. It's fleet, and it gets to where it needs to be when it needs to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And the little bits of like the songs, like, oh, this song was based on this song, and then this song was based on this song, and you're putting these little things together, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. So it's just iteration and iterations and iterations, and that kind of led me towards kind of figuring out a little bit about the ending,
Mm-hmm.
especially when she found the key in her pocket.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay.
That was so good.
Yeah, I was like,
that was so good.
She knows that the key, and I kept saying, I was like, oh, okay, they did a lot of Chekhov's gun
right
in this movie,
mm-hmm.
But they did it so you would remember it, and you'd be like, okay, when is this going to come back up? And just when I forgot about the board with the nails in it. And then I remembered, I'm like, wait, there's some other Chekhov's gun in here. What is it? What is it? And then I was like, and then they brought it back, and I was like, of course.
It's satisfying, right? That's the whole thing, is that it's so, emotionally satisfying when you're able to notice something and forget about it and have it come back and be what it's supposed to be. There was this movie that came out a couple of years ago. I think it was called The Wretched, where they did this thing where they kept the camera really focused on this it was a wine bottle opener. It was a corkscrew, and okay, that corkscrew is going to be the weapon that this person uses in the scene coming up to defend themselves, because at this point they've established, we're in a dangerous situation. You need to have something to defend yourself in case something happens. And they spend all this time like visually associating this thing with this woman and this dangerous situation, and then it never pays off. And it is so completely unsatisfying. You're just confused. Why did you establish that if you're not going to use it?
Yep.
It's just that's sloppy direction, whereas this is is precise. It's it's the ideal way to do that.
Yeah, this was just this dropped those little hints throughout, and every time I was waiting for it, and then enough went on that I forgot about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, there it is. So
yeah, just those little visual things, like he switches places. He has one of his people. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's he's got a little help going on. Switches places, and like the head is turned a different way, and it's just, you just don't notice it for a second, and then it's and yeah, it pays off so beautiful. I just love that. I love this movie. Yeah. It was so good.
It really, really was. It was just, how a movie has a really good trailer and it doesn't give anything away like most trailers do, but you're just worried enough that it's just not going to live up to expectations, and then it completely blows those expectations out of the water. That was this movie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. I honestly, for a time, I've been thinking to myself, Hugh Grant kind of deserves an Academy Award nomination for this. He is just that good. He takes over, but he doesn't completely, blow out the other two actors across from him. He's just so great at holding court, but not, overly dominating things. It's not a hammy performance in any way. It's not an over the top performance. It's just so ingratiating until it turns perfectly malevolent. And even then, he's got such an even tone that it's almost confusing.
Yeah. Well, and he's talking in circles sometimes to try to confuse them. And you're trying to follow along, and you understand how they could be just confused enough that they're not 100% sure he's a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah.
Even once they're in his little sanctuary.
It's an
So
incredible performance. Like I'm saying, it's it's not even like a whole new Hugh Grant, and yet it is. Like his
yeah,
third act is just, as an actor, is just incredible. Yeah, he did that movie with Jason Statham, not back in January, where he was not the main villain, but he was a bad guy, and he was so incredibly funny, like just the ultimate scene stealer in that. And then, of course, he did it again in Dungeons and Dragons, where he was just the funniest guy in that movie, just had all the best lines, and again, playing a villain. And now here he is playing like the ultimate villain in a movie, and just absolutely crushing it. I mean, just an absolute star from beginning to end.
yeah.
I love this for him. I want him to be the new Vincent Price. I want him to be a horror movie villain all the time now. See what else he can do with this.
Yeah, even I hate to say that, like, but I could see prequels of this movie. Where he's searching out religion and he's being kind of evil. I think that would be kind of fun.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to see more of what he's going to do next, because he's just incredible. I mean, even playing just the Oompa Loompa in the Willy Wonka movie, he was hilarious. The man just knows how to do this. He's just such a pro now that it's almost second nature to him.
I also like how they lit him, because when you think of Hugh Grant, you think of, aside from Divine Brown, you think of, sorry, deep cut. You think of the charm and this beautiful, privileged British man, and they lit him so that every wrinkle and crag in his face just leaps out of the camera, and you see his age, and you see that he's been around the block. I mean, he was born in 1960.
Wow.
And you don't think of him as that old.
No.
But he looks his age in this, and it's kind of refreshing.
There's also the look of him, the look of the house. It implies this entire life that this man has had, to build what he's been building and do what he's been doing. And without words, you're not going to get an explanation necessarily, but without words, you understand that this has been going on for some time, and he's been at this for a while. That is it's just so rich with lore that it doesn't even have to stop to explain it.
And he's also somebody you can imagine, like, whenever he leaves a room, he turns the light off. It's so he likes it dark and mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
So,
just tremendous. Just a really solid movie. It is among the better movies of the year for sure, and highly, highly recommend.
Definitely.
All right. Let's get on to our classic. We're going to talk about Candyman, the legendary Tony Todd, passing away this week, and it's just another legend gone. But people kind of overlook him in terms of the history of horror, and they really shouldn't, because he did so many things. He did so many movies, and of course, Candyman being the kind of the crowning achievement for him, because he does make Candyman into one of those guys, into one of those. He's right. I mean, I would rate him higher than Chucky myself, but I'm not a big Chucky fan. But like with the Jason Voorhees and with the the Leatherfaces and these legacy horror characters.
Yeah, I met Tony Todd one time at a convention. I didn't have any Candyman merch for him to sign. Otherwise, I would have had him sign something. The nicest gentleman you ever would want to meet. He just was he just loved talking about work, and he loved acting. I had 245 acting credits, I think.
And he
It would
only
take you
worked,
a lot.
he started in 1986, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And he, aside from Candyman, I mean, he was in the Night of the Living Dead remake as Ben.
Mhm.
Um, and really, if you compare him and Dwayne Jones in that role, he stands right up to Dwayne Jones in the original.
Mhm.
Um, he's such a presence on screen. Um, and with Candyman, you believe that Virginia Madsen could fall for this man who is ruining her fucking life. Everything he's doing to her, and because he wants to possess her, and she's letting him because he's so charming and sexy and tragic. And I think that some characters really love the tragedy of others, and I think she fell for the tragedy of him,
Mhm.
and the whole time knew that he was going to ruin her. Um, so yeah, I just the way his full presence in almost anything he did was pretty incredible, especially Candyman.
Undoubtedly, and he was in Platoon, he was in Colors, he was in Lean on Me. I mean, just so many movies. I mean, he has more movies on his IMDb that or on his Wikipedia that don't have Wikipedia pages. Because the man just kept working and working, and it would take just about. So he made a lot of movies that not a lot of people remember, but also he made just a lot of really incredible movies. Like his appearance in Final Destination was supposed to be kind of a one-off, just kind of a nod to horror classics, and then they just kept bringing him back for each subsequent Final Destination movie because he suddenly became the through line, the guy who had the gift giving all the information to.
And he because he was such a hard worker and such a presence, bringing him into that movie and then subsequent movies, um, you know, Hatchet as Reverend Zombie. They brought him back for the second one too because he's such a presence that doesn't get. Um, I think he got the respect from his peers, but outside of the horror community, if you said Tony Todd, I don't know, a lot of people would be like, "Oh yeah, anything other than Candyman." You know what I mean? But the people in the horror community, they just saw that he did so much. Um, so many different roles. Uh, uh, just everything, like from the different movies that he did to um, the he was in a show and he just really really stood out to me, and now I'm losing it because of course that's just how I am.
Mhm.
He did an episode of Boston Legal that I saw. It just happened to be on TV one day, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's Tony Todd!" The one episode I saw of Psych, I watched. My dad was watching a bunch of. He's like, "Oh, sometimes I'll just sit here and watch 2 or 3 episodes of this," and then the one episode that I sat down for was with Tony Todd. Um, he really just kind of wanted to work and loved to work.
He also had,
And the
yeah.
fact that,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
He's also in the DC universe, in the animated universe. He was the voice of Darkseid in a number of DC comic cartoons, Lego cartoons, and just also had a great, incredible sense of humor about himself. He did a very funny. The only funny thing in House of Black was him just doing a little bit. He did a couple of those though, where he also would demonstrate just he had a very smart sense of humor on top of being this kind of intimidating presence.
Yeah, I think he knew who he was, and he knew that he knew what he brought to a project. And a lot of people don't necessarily know what they bring to a project. They're asked to do it because they've got a look or whatever, but he was somebody who he was very self-aware. I think I listened to the Eli Roth's History of Horror
Mm-hmm.
with him, and he even said that. He said, "Look, I know who I am, and I know why people want me on screen, and I'm going to always be the presence that people want." He did an episode of Murder She Wrote
Hmm.
towards the end of the run. That every time I watch, because I watch that show religiously. But every time I watch that and he comes on, I'm just like, oh, it's Tony Todd. That was actually what I watched after Candyman the other night after I heard about his death. So,
Hmm.
do you remember him in The Rock?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah.
I think the one that really stands out for me outside of Candyman is The Crow. He was so
Yeah.
good as the sort of secondary bad guy in that movie. Just a strong presence, but just delivering exactly what was needed of him. He was so great at just slotting into a role and delivering exactly what was asked of him.
Something too. You think of him as Candyman, but everybody only really remembers the first one because the second one was okay. The third one was garbage, but nobody holds that against him
No.
because he's even in the garbage ones, he was playing it as Daniel Robitaille. He just really still embodied it. So
Yeah, even he could, like I said, I mean, he was the kind of guy who could hold his own in a bad movie and still not, not be affected by the bad around him.
yeah. Did you ever see the movie Sushi Girl?
No, that one's not familiar to me.
So that was actually produced, and one of the stars of it is somebody I was friends with in high school. It's a few years older than me. And he was in that, and he was very, very memorable in that movie. So if you ever get a chance to see that, it's a local hero made good. Um, but yeah, he just never was bad, even in a bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and I do wonder if just for the sake of, I don't know, why Candyman doesn't come to mind immediately next to those other movies, the other iconic horror movies. You kind of wonder.
yeah, that's because you're not immersed in the horror world. Make no mistake, he does. I hate AI art, but somebody did an AI of Freddy, Jason, and Michael standing over a headstone that said Candyman.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, like
It's like that's just so it's just cringe. I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah. You're not going to get any pushback on that from me.
Your heart's in the right place, but no, don't do stuff like that.
Exactly.
But he should have been talked about for a versus, like him versus. I think they should have put him and Chucky together in a movie.
No, we don't want to bring Candyman down to Chucky's. I joke. Chucky is his own thing, and I really, really like Chucky. but Candyman in that first movie is just kind of perfection.
Candyman versus Chucky, Candyman versus Freddy, Candyman versus Jason.
Candyman versus Pinhead.
I would watch all of those movies.
Yeah.
Candyman versus Pinhead would be amazing. That would be the perfect undercard to Freddy versus Jason.
Exactly.
It's sad how many of those movies have never gotten made.
And now never will.
Yeah. In terms of like putting, why haven't those happened? Other than Freddy versus Jason, why aren't they trying to put those guys into the same movies like they did back in the Abbott Costello days?
Yeah, I mean, it's there are some that would lend themselves really, like Michael Myers versus Jason. I'm trying to make that movie in high school. Did not go over very well because you couldn't get a bunch of high school students who weren't really into horror movies to try to make a horror movie, especially when you're shooting it on VHS. But yeah, I don't know. Like I would watch the shit out of Michael Myers versus Jason. There's a comic of Ash versus Jason versus Evil Dead. So
yeah, I would have loved to have seen that movie. Anything with Bruce Campbell, it would be amazing.
Agreed.
I wonder if it's one of those things like there was this thing about that happened on the set of it was Roger Rabbit, where they said like Bugs Bunny can't get one over on Mickey Mouse and Mickey can't get one over on Bud. Like they have to be seen on equal footing. I wonder if that's like we can't let one of these characters do the job to the other one.
Well, that was the whole thing between Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah,
was Jason, you don't know who won because Jason, yes, he cut off Freddy's head, but then Freddy winks at the camera specifically to make it a draw.
It's just like professional wrestling.
Yep. You joke, but
wrestlers have this thing like where in a big match, like if they're gonna do the 3, they've got to get the shoulder up right after 3 seconds to let you know, hey, I didn't get completely beat.
Yep.
Oh, that's funny. All right, next week we're going to be talking about more new movies. The Red One with The Rock and Chris Evans, of course. Amelia Perez on Netflix. Absolutely, that should be the headliner probably, if it's as good as people say it is. And also a Real Pain. Jesse Eisenberg's directorial debut with Kieran Culkin is going to be debuting in theaters nationwide this week as well. And we'll be talking about that on the next show.
I can't believe you're going to make me watch Red One.
And Jeff will pick his favorite Santa movie as our classic. So there you go.
Ooh, Christmas Evil it is. No, we talked about that last year.
All right.
We'll talk about it again. I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, thanks. Have a good one.